Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped to have you here today. If you're the kind of person who geeks out over real, focused solutions to massive, real-world problems, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're diving deep into this massive shift happening right now in Kenyan schools. And yeah, we're talking about AI tutoring. Now, I know. You hear AI in the classroom and it sounds like some futuristic, completely out-of-reach luxury, right? But as we're going to see from our source material today, bringing AI into Kenyan schools, it's not a luxury at all. It's actually an immediate practical necessity. We're going to break down the hard data, the actual costs, and the exact step-by-step blueprints schools are using to make this work. So buckle up, because this kind of changes the whole game for educational resources. All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're looking at 1, the 51-second problem. 2, cost, myth versus reality. 3, the Nakuru success story. 4, a 10-week rollout blueprint. And lastly, number 5, how to fail at AI. Okay, let's dive into this with section 1, the 51-second problem and the impossible math of Kenya's classrooms. So when people argue against putting EdTech in Kenya, they usually say, well, students just can't afford the devices. But our sources tell us that is actually the wrong objection entirely. The real question we need to ask is, what problem are we actually trying to solve here? And to answer that, we've got to look at the literally impossible math happening inside these classrooms. Just look at this number, 47. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, your average public secondary school teacher in Kenya is staring out at 47 students per class. And remember, that is just the average. In places like Turkana or West Pokot, that ratio completely skyrockets past 65-1. So, this isn't a lack of teacher dedication or anything like that. This is a pure, undeniable, hard math problem. Which leads us directly to this absolute gut punch of a number. 51, because if a teacher has 47 students in a standard 40-minute lesson, do the math, they have exactly 51 seconds of individual attention to give each kid. Think about that for a second. 51 seconds. Honestly, that is barely enough time to even realize a student is lost, let alone pinpoint exactly why they're misunderstanding, say, quadratic equations, explain it to them, and then make sure they actually got it. So what ends up happening? The student just goes home still completely lost. And to make all this even more urgent, Kenya's whole educational paradigm has actually shifted. The old 8-4-4 system kind of rewarded cramming and rote memorization, which, let's be real, is way easier to manage when you have a massive class. But the new CBC, the competency-based curriculum, it demands something totally different. It demands that kids actually demonstrate mastery of specific skill strands. It requires individual tracking. And those 51 seconds of teacher time, yeah, they are completely, hopelessly insufficient for a system that explicitly demands individualized learning. And that is exactly where AI tutoring steps into the gap. It's not there to replace the teacher's 40-minute lesson, not at all. It's there to provide that infinite patience, that 24/7 follow-up that a human being simply cannot physically give to 47 kids at the exact same time. Moving on to section 2. Cost, myth versus reality, demystifying Silicon Valley pricing assumptions. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it tackles the biggest roadblock administrators face. I mean, when school boards hear AI, they almost instantly picture these astronomical Silicon Valley-level price tags that are going to just obliterate their local budgets, right? It's seen as this total tech fantasy. Well, let's completely dismantle that myth. Sure, you have free tools like YouTube, but while they're great for content, they are practically useless for tracking if a student actually mastered a specific CBC strand. And on the high end, you have these massive full platforms that need at least 3G connectivity. But look right there in the middle at the WhatsApp AI tier. For roughly 150 to 400 Kenyan shillings per student per year, a school gets a CBC-aligned conversational tutor that literally generates weekly progress reports for the teacher. And the absolute best part, it runs on basic 2G internet. No fancy app downloads required. That makes it incredibly accessible for a kid who maybe only gets to borrow a shared family phone in the evenings. So let's do some direct, no-nonsense arithmetic here based on that middle tier. Picture a school with 400 students using this WhatsApp AI model. At, let's say, 250 shillings a pop, that is 100,000 shillings. Now, our source material heavily emphasizes adding a mandatory 20% implementation buffer, for teacher training and the inevitable tech hiccups. So you're looking at a total budget of 120,000 Kenyan shillings for the entire year. To put that into perspective for you, hiring just one single part-time remedial tutor in Nairobi is going to run you anywhere from 180,000 to 300,000 shillings a year, and they can only reach a fraction of those kids. But for just 120,000 shillings, All 400 students get 24/7 individualized support. It is just a completely different universe when it comes to the budget. All right, section 3, the Nakuru success story, real results in one term. Okay, so the theory makes total sense, and the math checks out. But, does this actually work in a real-world Kenyan school? Let's anchor this theory in reality with a specific case study from a semi-urban secondary school over in Nakuru County. And I really want you to picture the structural hurdles this place was dealing with. They've got 520 students, they've got spotty Wi-Fi that only works in one computer block, and maybe 45% of the kids actually have their own smartphones. But the real kicker? They had exactly one math teacher handling 3 entire streams of Form 2. That is 138 kids for one single teacher. Doing one-on-one remediation wasn't just difficult there, it was structurally impossible. So to solve the phone issue, they actually used a shared device model during their library periods. And I absolutely love this because it proves you don't need some perfect, shiny one-to-one iPad setup to make AI work. You really just need to be resourceful. And just look at the results of that resourcefulness. Before they ran the AI pilot, the Form 2 math average was sitting at about 43%. So they bring in this WhatsApp bot to specifically target the 3 CBC strands the kids were struggling with most, things like quadratic expressions. And after just one single term, we're talking about 13 weeks here, the math average jumped up to 54%. That is a massive 11 percentage point jump. And get this, they pulled this off without changing class times, without hiring any new teachers, and it cost them a grand total of 220 shillings per student for the term. The teacher got a weekly WhatsApp report showing, hey, these 5 specific students are stuck on this specific problem. That meant they could do targeted 15-minute interventions instead of wasting time reteaching the entire class. Just incredible. Let's move to section 4 and see how this builds. 10-week rollout blueprint, how to implement AI systematically. Because listen, results like Nakuru, they don't just happen by accident. They happen by design. If you're watching this and thinking, okay, how do we actually pull this off in our school without everything just descending into chaos? Well, our source material gives us this exact sequential 10-week blueprint. Notice how picking the actual tool isn't until step 2. Step 1 is diagnosing your actual on-the-ground constraints, like, do we only have 2G? But I really want to focus on the absolute most critical phase here, which is step 3, teacher orientation. If you take away literally anything from this explainer today, please let it be this. If a teacher feels like AI is just one more chore added to their massive workload, they are quietly going to ignore it, and your adoption rate will just flatline. You have to show teachers what the tool does automatically so they can stop doing it themselves. Show them how it replaces their current heavy lifting. Because once they see the AI actually pinpointing exactly which kids need help, they go from being skeptics to being your absolute biggest champions for the focused pilot in step 4. Which brings us to our final section, section 5, how to fail at AI, avoiding the most common pitfalls. So the crucial point here is that we have to be pragmatic. Not every rollout is going to be a Nakuru success story, right? Dropping EdTech into a school ecosystem is delicate, and there are some surefire ways to guarantee you'll fail. So let's talk about what absolutely not to do. First off, AI is a continuous system. You have to manage it. It's not some magic wand you just buy and forget about. You are definitely going to fail if you launch without that teacher champion we were just talking about. You're going to fail if you go to some fancy conference in Nairobi and buy a beautifully designed, data-heavy platform only to get back and realize your rural students only have 2G connections. Another huge mistake? Measuring your success by how many accounts were created instead of how many learning sessions the kids actually completed. Oh, and please, whatever you do, do not skip the parent information session. The data shows that schools spending just 20 minutes explaining the tool to parents see a 40% higher adoption rate. Why? Because informed parents encourage their kids to use it, while uninformed parents see their kid on a phone and just confiscate it. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why local context matters so much. To dodge those exact traps, our source material highlights the localized approaches of partners like AI consultancy Kenya. See, rather than just acting like software salespeople, they actually run compliance reviews for the Kenya Data Protection Act 2019 to make absolutely sure the students' data is safe. And they build solutions that actually fit the messy reality of Kenyan schools, whether that means offline tools, shared device setups, or those 2G WhatsApp bots we discussed. Because when you're deploying tech, local context is quite literally everything. We started this explainer today by talking about a math problem, and the hard truth is, Kenya's 47-to-1 student-teacher ratio, it's not just going to magically vanish. The budget simply isn't there to hire enough teachers over the next 5 years to close that gap. Plus, the new CBC system demands a level of individualized tracking that the old system never did. Now, AI tutoring doesn't magically fix the structural shortage of human teachers, but what it does do is completely rewrite what is mathematically possible within those constraints. It takes that tiny 51-second window of attention and turns it into infinite hours of patient, fully customized support. The tools are already here, they're affordable, and they actually work on the basic phones students already have. So the only real question left is, are you ready to change the math in your classroom? Thank you guys so much for learning with me today, and I will see you in the next explainer.